Hey everyone, Alex here, healthhacksreviewed.com. Been getting a lot of questions on Hypervibe, the company, and if Hypervibe's new models, if the specs are accurate. And I wanted to make this video. I've gone over many times that many of the different vibration machines in the industry, the specifications are usually off or false or inaccurate, and have had to rely on third-party engineering firm studies. And so let's talk about Hypervibe for a second here. All right, here we are. I am pulling up, if you've seen some of my other videos, this is the engineering firm betamachinery.com. They did a Hypervibe test on this brand. There's the analyst. This is back in 2012. Now, I would bring up here that the machine that they analyzed is this one. This machine is their original machine that was on the market for a long, long time, longer than most machines. And so this was referred to as the Hypervibe Performance. It was a pivotal machine, okay, and the specs were essentially 28 hertz as the speed, and displacement. We had, now I find this very interesting. I believe the displacement was around 15 millimeters, but this is huge right here. I'm a little shocked by this. I remember using the machine for sure, but this actually, now that I'm seeing this spec, this is unloaded, by the way. I mean, I might say that might be the highest amplitude or displacement, I'm sorry, that I've seen in the industry. But either way, and then here's the loaded. What we would expect to see, of course, is a little bit less, but that is still actually one of the highest in the industries. Okay, so this was the old model of machine. These are the G-Force. It was always one of the strongest machines for the consumer market. That was also used in many commercial settings, and still is actually to this day. Now, as of a couple years ago, Hypervibe often brought in some new redesign models with different types of speed settings, which I think is great. Whole new look, whole new interface. So what they did, and let me try to clarify this because some people were confused, was the performance machine that is no longer sold in the US is now basically, I would say, closest. It's kind of in between two models now. So whereas we only had the performance before, which is one model, we now have three models, okay? G10 Mini, G14 Home, G17 Pro. So what they did is with this Pro is probably closer to the specs that we'll see with the original performance machine, okay? 17 Gs, and remember, we'll go back here for a second. 17 Gs, so the performance was still a little bit stronger, but it's closest to this 24 right here. Let's see, what else? 5 to 35 hertz, and we have maximum of 28 with the performance. So I'm just pointing out a few things here. The frequency does go higher, which is really nice because we see in the clinical studies on different other machines, going back years and years now, in clinical studies, it tended to show that 30 hertz was excellent for giving solid, consistent benefits, even more dependable than, let's say, 20 hertz, as just like one example. To have a 35 is really, really solid. That's where a lot of the studies were at. And a lot of the studies were even with vertical and lineals, which naturally are usually much higher hertz. So this is impressive for a pivotal in general to get that high. But I just wanted to point out that that is one thing that is higher now than the performance. What's lower? What's lower is the 7 millimeter. And we're now talking step 14. Now, why did they do that? Because it'd be a great question to ask. 35 is really intense. Most people have never used a machine that high. Okay, not too many machines go that high in general. There are a few. Some are 15,000 plus. I mean, there's very few. I could count them on my hand that go actually that high. On a pivotal, that's pretty intense. It takes a lot for somebody to condition themselves to handle that at a high amplitude. So what they did here was lower it, which basically what that means is now a much larger amount of people can basically condition themselves far more easily up in the 30s, let's just say, or even 28. 28 is pretty darn intense on the old original machine. But this allows now more people to more easily condition themselves to higher speeds. And I think that's a great idea because we're now leveraging some of the higher speed effects that we see in studies. But if this was, say, 35 hertz, and let's say it was the 14 millimeters, okay, that it was on the original machine, nobody would use that. Maybe some elite athletes, maybe for about 60 seconds. It would just basically be too powerful. So there is an upper threshold of what's even workable, what even makes sense. So by lowering it, that was actually a smart idea. Okay, a lot of people would look and say, oh my gosh, it's lower, it must be worse. Not necessarily, that's really fast. Believe me, try standing on a machine even at 25, on a pivotal 28, and that's pretty darn intense. Okay, and you normally do it for a very short period of time. Nobody's just sitting there at 35 hertz, for 10 minutes straight, unless you're highly trained, and even then it might be just too much. So 17 G's maximum. If you put that in the formula calculator we use in other videos, that's pretty much accurate. So the G-force is less, even though you get a higher speed. It's just not a high enough speed to be more G's. The displacement has a lot to do with the body under force and time under force. And so because that is about double the displacement or amplitude, we will definitely still see higher G-force on the original machine that is no longer sold. But again, I would say that coming in at 17 Gs, which is actually higher than the Galileo Fitness that we saw in another video, that's the German engineered medical cleared device, whole body vibration, pivotal, $15,000, beautiful machine. That machine is 15 G-force. This is 17, okay? So in other words, and that company did a ton of studies. So to come in higher than that is excellent. That's going to satisfy, honestly, everybody's needs. Do you need to go any higher than that? Not really, if we're just looking at studies. And then we're also seeing, this speed setting that's perfectly also within the studies range. So do you need anything more? Not really. Honestly, elite athletes can use this, and there's plenty of ways to where it will train them very efficiently. So this is totally sufficient right here. To go any higher, again, it's really kind of speculative. I don't think it's that useful per se. So now let's take a look back over here because we also have the G14. The G14 has a higher amplitude. Okay, we have 11 versus 7. Okay, so that's actually going to produce, because it has a high amplitude, that's going to produce pretty close to the same G-force, but at a much lower speed setting, about 10 hertz less, which is, that's a lot of speed less. Keep in mind, most machines out there are about 10 to 15 hertz to begin with, about 90% of machines. So lopping off 10 hertz, still pulling off 14 Gs. That's at 11 millimeter displacement. So basically this machine is, on a speed setting wise, pretty close to the performance. So you can kind of start to see here, right, that, and it is less amplitude. These two machines, the G14 and the G17, are kind of like a mix. They're kind of in between. One's a little higher in some regards than the original performance machine, and one's a little less in some different specifications. I think it's a better idea to kind of come out with a few different models that basically is going to suit every single type of person, okay? So there'll be some people that just don't want to go that high in speed, but they still really want to get the therapeutic levels of high G-force. So, it's perfect for these types of people, okay? And then you do have options to get a tower, or a tower that's permanently attached, or that you can unattach anytime you want, or no tower at all. There's no other brand currently that does that, by the way, if that does intrigue you in terms of detachable and undetachable. If you actually think a Vibe plate actually does have a bar that you can attach and unattach, it's more permanently bolted, so it is challenging with the Vibe plate to be taking off that railing, I guess you could say, This is just a little bit more convenient, and the first of its kind, again, that has that sort of option. And that is also Bluetooth, has Bluetooth control. But so there's some new improvements versus the performance. But I would say, so just looking at, their old machine specs, those were accurate at the time. Still was actually one of the strongest machines on the market. And now we have the new models that in some ways surpass this machine in some specs, and some ways don't in some specs. But again, all in all, out of these three options, that should satisfy every type of possible user, even in commercial settings. So anyways, if you have any more questions about the original model here, or furthermore about their specs, or what you might actually need in your practice or at home, depending on your health goals, health conditions, I sell a variety of different brands, and I can consult with you in a very unbiased way to help you kind of figure out and also process your order, because I kind of do it all, and people trust me just because I am representing so many different brands to really provide them the best honest consultation out there. Anyways, my website, once again, is healthhacksreview.com. You can reach me by email or give me a call anytime. Thanks for watching.